Welcome to the Leafy Podcast, helping real estate investors and entrepreneurs grow. Say hello to your hosts, Jennifer Gligoric and Brian Price, founders of Leafy Legal Services, teaching you how to protect your assets, grow your business, and manage your wealth. Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leafy Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Tammy, the podcast manager, and joining me today hosting is Jennifer Gligoric, the COO of Leafy Legal Services, and she has on a very interesting guest for us today. So, Jennifer, how you doing? I'll get started here.
Well, I'm doing great. And today we have someone who, I'm going to try not to give him too much crap for going to University of Central Florida instead of University of Miami like me. Nah, he's great. He's here. He's got 15 years of experience in the self-directed IRA industry. His company is the custodian and has under their control over $1.4 billion worth of assets. One of the most important things you can do as a real estate investor and entrepreneur is to be able to harness the power of your own money. Again, it's mindset. Be your own bank. All of these things that you hear. Well, this is one of the best products you can use for it. And so we're going to talk about the rules, how you know you qualify, and we are here with the expert on this. His name is Jason DeBono, and he is with NuViewTrust.com. That's NuView.com. Welcome to the show, Jason. How are you?
Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Tammy. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you here. So, okay, we get a lot of people who are like, what do you mean be your own bank? Harness the power of your own money, self-directed. So tell us just the basic description of an SDIRA and what we're talking about today. And then I'm going to hammer you with a bunch of questions because I'm mean. No, just kidding.
All right. Well, I'm ready for it. And given the University of Miami background, I'm sure they won't be too difficult.
Okay.
So as a, self-directed IRAs are such an interesting idea because so many people are so used to an IRA as really a 401k that you contribute, while you're an employee and you put money away, your employer matches it. And then you go and buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds and you get to retirement and you hope there's enough money in there. And that's kind of what they were created and intended for. But what a self-directed IRA is simply a way to take your retirement account out of what we would consider kind of Wall Street investments, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and make Main Street investments, right? Real estate, private notes, promissory notes, as Jennifer alluded to, being your own bank. There's so many things you can do with an IRA. And the issue is your IRA is not causing you, the challenges you have today. It's the custodian that holds it that's keeping you from buying these assets. So in closing on that, we kind of tell people, if you want to go buy Wall Street assets, take your IRA to a Wall Street based firm, right? Schwab, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch. If you want to go buy Main Street assets with your IRA, then you got to find a custodian that deals with Main Street assets. And that's what NuView Trust does.
Yes. And one of the things people say, oh, well, I have a very diversified portfolio. And then you ask them, well, what's your portfolio in? And they'll say, oh, it's in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And I'm like, that's not a diversified portfolio, right? And then you have to tell them, no, if you really want to diversify, you're going to want to also invest in real estate, invest in businesses. You might want to invest in Bitcoin. There are many different types of investments to truly diversify. So tell us a little bit about that. Why are SDIRAs opened up to other investment and then traditional IRAs are not?
So IRAs, when Congress created the code to create IRAs, if you kind of go back and think about what caused it, there was really no retirement plans in the early 70s. It was all pension plans, right? Work for the same company 30 years, get a gold watch and a pension plan. When that started to phase out due to the rising cost of managing them, they created really two programs, 401ks, which is employer-based retirement saving, and IRAs, which is individual-based retirement savings. So when they created the rules, they didn't actually define what you could do in any of those accounts. They simply defined what you couldn't do. And so what caused most people to believe that they had to own stocks, bonds, and mutual funds is the fact that the only companies that people knew of that would hold IRAs were banks, because they were on every corner, and brokerages, because they had the deep pockets to advertise everywhere. So there's always been companies like NuView that have existed to help clients with the unique investments outside the stock market, but it just hasn't really been available to the general public as accessibly as it has been over the last 5 or 7 years. Oop, I'm sorry, Jennifer. I think you're still muted.
I am still muted. Look at that. Okay, we're gonna fix that. Emmy. Okay, so that brings me to my next question. One of the questions is, well, how do I know if I even qualify for an SD IRA? Can I just get one? And what if I already have an IRA? Am I limited for what I can put into the SD IRA? Is that going to, dilute my funds? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, this really trips a lot of people up because there's a lot of confusion around kind of guidelines and eligibility. And to kind of clear some murky waters, everybody that's eligible for an IRA or retirement plan is eligible to self-direct that retirement plan. So the eligibility is not around what you invest into. Those rules are universal. The eligibility is around whether or not you can contribute to an IRA. And really, the only thing you need to contribute to an IRA is earned income. So for most people, they qualify. Now, how they earn their money, whether they're self-employed or not, whether they're covered under an employer plan or not, may dictate how much they can put in. And then lastly, as far as moving money, once you've contributed it, so if you've worked 20 years for AT&T and put 500 grand over the years into your 401k, you can move that to an IRA once you leave that employer, no questions asked. There's no tax, there's no penalty. Just like if you have an IRA at Fidelity today, you could go and choose to move some or all of that money from Fidelity to NuView tomorrow. There's no tax, no penalty, and no limitation on moving from custodian to custodian. There's only a limitation and tax on putting money in or potentially taking it out.
And so when you put money in, so let me ask you, if you already have an IRA, let's say you're working, you're a W-2 employee, you're working, you have an IRA through your employer, but you also want another one. Can you double put money away, or there are limits? Are you limited by how much you've already put that year into the new IRA?
Well, it's a little bit of both, and I'll
Okay.
just preface it by saying I'm not a tax professional. I've been doing this a long time, but every scenario is different. So make sure that you're getting some good tax and legal advice before trying to get too creative. But the short answer is yes, you can have multiple accounts. So for example, I'm covered under NuView's 401k plan, right? As an employee of NuView, I have a limit on my 401k plan. I can, in addition to that, have an IRA, and I can have a pre-tax IRA like a traditional, or a Roth IRA, which is post-tax. There's nothing precluding me from this. Now, there's an income limit on the Roth that could cause challenges. Or if I max out my 401k, I may not get the full tax deduction in my IRA too, depending on my income. So there's some individual issues that come with that, but the general rule is not whether or not you can do it. You can always do it. How much of a tax benefit you get as a result of doing it may be impacted, but you can certainly always have a 401k and an IRA in the same tax year.
Okay, that's good to know, because we get a lot of questions like that for what we do, which is protecting people's assets as well. So tell me, when you are looking at this, tell me some of the creative ways people can use a self-directed IRA to invest that traditionally they're not able to do, or they may not know that they can do.
So we kind of see really three main asset classes, and keep in mind, inside all of those asset classes are a lot more asset classes. So kind of like a stock, right? A stock is an asset class, but then you can look and take healthcare as its own asset class, and retail is its own asset class. So we see three predominant asset classes: real estate, and that can range from single family, multifamily, to raw land, acreage, hunting land. We have clients that own boat slips, burial plots, any deeded piece of real estate, timberland can be held and would fall under that general asset class. The second asset class we see is loans. So this could be your traditional, real estate backed loans, right? Mortgages, first position, second positions. We see unsecured loans. We see personal loans. I personally wrote a loan to someone to pay off credit card debt, and they pay me 9%, and they paid off credit card debt at 19%. So, that's something that my IRA collects every month at a 9% interest rate. You can write loans by boats, secured by boats and cars. And we have clients that do loans secured by liquor licenses, life insurance policies, you name it. There's a lot of asset classes inside of lending, as well as business lending. And right now we're seeing a lot of that in small business loans. You got a lot of businesses with COVID that are unable to generate the revenue they normally did. And so they're turning to the private markets, as banks may not be willing to write them a loan today. So the private markets are stepping in, and your IRA could write that loan. And then lastly, private equity. So this is, investing into private companies, private enterprise, private investment funds, syndications. We see this in real estate related assets, debt related assets, all the way down to true private equity. So if you kind of look at a company like, say, Uber, who I think everybody knows of, who's now public, but a couple of years ago they were private. So if you wanted to invest money into them, you couldn't do it through Schwab because they weren't cleared on any trading platform like the Dow or NASDAQ or anything. There was no actual way to access their investment. Now, being that they're public, everyone has access. But before that, obviously they'd need it would be a private transaction, need a custodian willing to hold a private transaction. So those are the big three asset classes. But again, there's hundreds of asset classes inside of there.
So really, just by having an SDIRA, you're opening up yourself to a different even type of business as an investor, because now you have the ability to save and make loans and then get interest, and you keep all the interest. So if they're paying you 6% and your interest rate is 3%, you're keeping and compounding that interest, correct?
Yeah, I mean, having a self-directed account, and it's not for everybody, right? I mean, the self and self-direction means you have to go make your own investments. So, and there's not a ticker symbol, list that you can go pick from. I mean, if you kind of think about it, if you log into Schwab today and you don't really know what to do, there's enough tools on their website and, mutual fund, ideas that you can go kind of close your eyes and type in a few letters and pick something. In the self-directed IRA world, there is no ticker symbol for investments. You have to go out and find them. But what we find is most clients of ours are already engaging in these type of investments outside their IRA today. They already own a rental house, or they've already invested into private companies, or they own their own business. So for them, this is not a new concept from an investment standpoint. It's an extension of what they do personally. What's new is using their retirement money to take advantage of the tax beneficial growth and get themselves out of the stock market. So not really a new strategy, just a new ideology of how to use your retirement money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is really new for a lot of people. They don't even think about this. I mean, and most people are used to W-2. You sit down in front of someone, they say, okay, we've got 5 different ways you can invest. Do you want conservative investments or risk investments? And you just, or someplace in the middle. And you usually only get like 4 choices maybe. And you just check the box for whatever package you think. And then you just, cross your fingers and just hope it does well, and hope that we don't have a pandemic, and then hope that it all doesn't crash, or someone at a company that you have a lot of stock with doesn't say something stupid and get canceled. I mean, there's so many, things that can just crash it when you talk about publicly traded stocks that are just, some of them are just even bizarre, that, this is how my retirement tanked was because of this. And so this way it gives you a lot more control. And even though there is more risk, I like to do more risk, wink, wink, because when you're controlling it, it's a little bit different. At least it feels less risky to me, but that's just a personality trait, I guess. There are some things though that are considered disqualified, meaning there are some transactions that are prohibited. Can you talk a little bit about what you can't do with your SDIRA, or disqualified, what was considered a disqualified party to do that?
Yeah, so I kind of like in the way that Congress wrote these rules, and for those that have kids will kind of understand, and I've got 2. And, when you think about how you parent kids, we don't really tell our kids what they can do, right? We kind of walk around telling them what they can't do. Don't eat that. Don't touch that. Get out of there, And the idea is that if we tell them all the things that they shouldn't do or can't do, that hopefully they'll kind of gauge an idea of all that they can do. When Congress wrote the rules on IRAs, they really viewed it the same way. We could write a list of 150 million things you can do, right? Or we can write a much smaller list of what we don't want you to do. And so that's what they opted for. So there's only 2 main rules that you have to be aware of with your investments. Rule number 1 is no life insurance, no collectibles. So if you want to use your IRA, you cannot go buy a life insurance policy, nor can you go buy anything deemed a collectible or bought for numismatic value. It's just simply prohibited. No matter what the asset is, if it falls under that criteria, the IRS says we prohibit it. And there's decent rationale behind it. I don't like to say Congress has any decent rationale, because in most cases they don't. But I think, there's times where they get it pretty darn close to right. And I think this is one of them. The second rule is really not around what you buy. It's around who that IRA or tax advantaged entity does business with. So one of the things we haven't talked about as a major benefit of IRAs is the fact that they grow tax deferred or tax free. So you can truly make an investment and pay zero tax forever. So if you took $1 and turned it into $1 million, it's tax free to you. And so obviously, as a result, the IRS knows that if you don't put a pretty sharp fence around that, people are going to find ways to funnel money in and out of that tax advantaged account, right? I mean, it's what tax evasion ultimately is. And if they make it too easy, the average person will do it, not because they're dishonest, but because they just genuinely hate paying taxes. Right. So the IRS says your IRA cannot buy life insurance collectibles. We talked about that. Rule number 2 says your IRA cannot do business with yourself. So my IRA cannot loan me money, because the IRS knows I'm either going to write it at a very low interest rate, which would get the money out of my account tax-free, or I'm going to write it at a huge interest rate, which would allow me to sock more money into my tax-free account. You get the idea.
Right.
And the IRS says, we're not going to police it. So no doing business with you, your spouse, your parents, your grandparents, your children and grandchildren, and the spouses and businesses of any of those parties.
Okay. Okay. So but everybody else, you're pretty much open with. So friends, other relatives, third cousins, is that still open?
Yeah.
Okay.
So brother, even closer. I mean, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews. So the way that they kind of get, they do put one little line in there, and I appreciate you asking that kind of says, you can do business with anyone not on this list, but we reserve the right to come in. And if it's not at an arm's length, it could still be a problem. So what that says is, my IRA can loan money to my brother. It is not prohibited. He is not a prohibited party to my IRA. But the IRS knows that if I write a loan to my brother at 25% interest, that's probably not a market rate deal, right?
Yeah.
And so basically the IRS left that little line there to say, look, we know that you can do business with lots of other people you have relationships with, and we're not going to police that. But just know that if you do business outside of what would appear to be general market rates, you could get yourself in trouble. And, having custodied, thousands and literally done hundreds of thousands of transactions on behalf of our customers, 99.9% of customers are doing it right, at least at face value. Every now and then we get something that our compliance office says, hey, this just seems a little out of the ordinary. And usually those people are trying to get something, into their IRA or out. And it's just the way it goes.
I bet you get, but now it's like, I don't know. Sometimes people really want to help somebody out. They want to try to do it and help them out. But yeah, you gotta look at it. So there's some things that you can't do, but other than that, it's kind of like the sky's the limit, because that's not a really big list for as many different types of investments you can do, especially if you're doing real estate, you're doing multifamily, and you're just doing a lot of that. Talking about multifamily, let's talk about what a lot of people are thinking about now. Because of COVID and because of things are happening, there are major shifts in the multifamily market. And I thought, well, man, that market's really going to suffer really bad when this came out. People aren't going to pay rent. They're going to say no, they're going to do this. But what I'm seeing is with big investors, it's kind of the opposite with that. So let's talk about a little bit about syndication for accredited and non-accredited investors. How can you use your IRA for something like that?
So any deal, any syndication deal, whether it be multifamily, I kind of refer to the way I tend to refer to syndications for people that may not know, exactly what they are, is they're kind of like a mutual fund in the non-public investment world. Basically, if I want to go invest into real estate, I can go buy a house. If I want to invest into a stock, I can go buy a stock. But if I don't quite know what stock to pick, and I'd rather own a bunch, but I don't want to be the picker, I can go invest into a mutual fund and someone will pick them for me, and I can basically leverage their knowledge. And a syndication works just like that, right? I'm leveraging the experience of that syndicator, the person that's the issuer, the manager, and then I'm getting some diversity. I'm not tied to just one piece of real estate. Even if it is one apartment, complex, it may have 200 doors, and therefore if 10% don't pay rent, I'm still doing okay because I got 90% that are. So sorry to kind of pause there, but I always like to kind of clear the air on that for people. So if you want to invest in, it depends on what type of investor you want to be. If you want to be active and you want to have complete control, make every investment decision, then a syndication is probably not best for you because you're giving someone else the money to go make it work for you. If you are more like me, where you don't really have the time, energy, and certainly lack the experience to know what's right, I can go find good quality sponsors that put together these syndications. So whether you're accredited or not is a personal thing. So if you're accredited, your IRA is accredited. If you're not accredited, your IRA is not accredited. So if you're going to invest into an offering and they require you to be accredited, whether you use your IRA or not, you'd still have to meet that accreditation threshold. If you do, one of the things that makes syndication so attractive in an IRA is syndications tend to be 3 to 5 years, maybe longer. There's a lot of activity to get you the full value of the investment. So if you make that investment with your personal money, you may need it back sooner. But if you think about your IRA, you don't need it anytime soon. So syndications fit nicely into IRAs. And if it does well from a performance standpoint, it's also tax-free or tax-deferred, which is awesome.
Yeah. So an IRA is not great for people who need to pull money out and to live off of it. It's just great there for an investment purpose. That's important to know too. There are products that are out there for people who want to, use it more as a business, but this is more for passive investments. And there are rules that govern that. Can you talk a little bit about the rules for passive investment governance with your SDIRA?
Yeah, so it's really an offshoot of the rules that we talked about in terms of disqualified parties.
Mm-hmm.
What the IRS doesn't want is they don't want people putting sweat equity into their IRA because of the tax benefits. So if I buy a house personally and I go fix it up and sell it and make a profit, the reason they don't mind that is because I got to pay tax on my profit. So they're going to get a piece of tax on my sweat equity. If I buy that investment in my IRA, and I do all the sweat equity and sell it, I don't pay any tax on the proceeds of sale. So the IRS says, well, we don't want people putting sweat equity into this tax advantage vehicle. So that's really where the active versus passive comes in. You can be as active as you want in the decision-making process, right? You can go research stocks and bonds all day long, just like you can go research real estate. You can go look at the properties. You can determine what color to paint them. You can determine how much to charge for rent. You can be as active as the decision-making functions allow you to, but you cannot cross the line and be active in terms of physically going in and providing sweat equity. And that's another reason why a lot of our clients do look at things like syndications, because it's truly passive. There is no question, of whether or not you've got to go and fix a toilet or anything. I mean, you're so far removed from that, that the temptation's not even there. So we do have a lot of what I would call active clients that find their own investments, do their own due diligence, manage the properties, tell us what to pay, keep track of everything, call the plumber when something goes bad, but they're doing all the decision-making functions. And then we have an equal number that are passive. They let someone else, they're more interested in mailbox money.
Okay. And so how do you, so if you have people that are doing it the most, so you can do whatever you want, what's the thing that tells the IRS you can't do it? I mean, I'm like a little confused by what you said. So clear it up.
And maybe I didn't understand that. I'm sorry.
Well, if you can do it as active or passive as you want, then what's the line that would break the rules to make sure it's considered a passive investment? Or does it matter with this?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I'm sorry. I missed the first part there.
Yeah.
So there is no clear line in the sand. I mean, if you think about when these rules were written in 1974 and they haven't changed. So, it's kind of like the Constitution, right? I mean, regardless of your opinion, there were no masks, around when that stuff was written. So it's the same thing today. They didn't anticipate people buying real property and people potentially fixing it up. They just didn't anticipate that. So the guidelines are general, where we believe the line is, and everyone can toe it as close or as far away as they choose. The difference between an active and passive investor has to do generally, and I use the term a few times, and that is sweat equity. you reserve any decision-making function as the IRA owner. Like I said, in stocks, I can determine what stock to buy, when to buy it, when to sell it, right? I can do all the research. I can look at price earning ratios. I can do all of that. I can watch all the news conferences, right? But that's all decision-making. And I can do all of those same things in real estate. I can go look at the property. I can see what it looks like. I can go gather all the information to make an informed decision. What I can't do is paint the place. I can't, knock down the walls or, anything where the IRS says, now you're past basic decision-making and now you're into the actual active sweat equity portion of your ownership.
You're flipping the properties with your own teams and going in there and doing that.
That's where they have issues. And it's a tax issue.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense with me. So anyway, we're wrapping back up. And before we end, and we've been talking to Jason DeBono. Jason is with NuView Trust. That's NuViewTrust.com. And before we end, I want him to talk a little bit about this incredible charity he has. He's the co-founder and chairman of Chair the Love. It's a 501c3 organization, and they provide wheelchairs and other mobility-related services to those in need. So can you tell us a little bit about your charity, why you started it, and where we can go for more information on that? Because I always want to promote people helping other people. You guys know that here on Leafy Podcast. So please tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'm happy to, and thank you for the opportunity. Share the Love was born out of a desire to give back, and I've been with NuView 15 of the 17 years we've been in business. And Glenn Mather, the founder of NuView, is has a big heart, and very early on, as we started to find some success, really challenged us to find ways to give back. And we came across, through a good friend of his out in California, an organization that provides wheelchairs throughout the world. And so for about 5 or 7 years, we really partnered with them. We did some fundraising events and we made some personal donations, company, and we ran promos on opening accounts and giving, proceeds back. And about 4 years ago, we had been thankfully very successful at raising money, that we were starting to get groups reaching out to us for other items and needs. And so we incorporated Share the Love. We created and incorporated Share the Love as its own 501c3. So Share the Love, about 50% of what it does is distributes wheelchairs throughout the world. So we've distributed wheelchairs to numerous countries. We also have delivered hundreds of wheelchairs here locally into local schools, into local businesses, into through other partner organizations here like the Center for Independent Living. We've distributed wheelchairs through local hospitals as people get discharged and may not have insurance, to be able to provide for a wheelchair, whether it be temporary or something more permanent. And then on top of that, the organization does a lot to help any other ways we can. We finished building out a school in Ecuador as something that we found as a worthy cause. We've sponsored the National Veterans Association's Paralympic Games, so that those men and women who have served our country and truly made the ultimate sacrifice and have been disabled as a result, we help support their initiatives so that they can go out and still be active and do the things that they're passionate about, just in a slightly different capacity. So we're always looking and eager to find ways to give back to the community. And we do put a primary focus on mobility and the items that come with mobility. And lastly, in this, one of the things that most people don't realize is when people think about mobility, we think about a wheelchair, and what we don't think about is all the caretakers. Mm-hmm. And being disabled is an incredible challenge individually, and it's even equally, if not more, of a challenge for family members that are able-bodied. And so, a lot of what we do is we don't believe we give someone disabled a wheelchair. We believe that we give a family that's impacted by disability. We give them as a group mobility and freedom, and that's really the mission of what we do every day.
Well, that is just absolutely incredible. I personally had to take care of a stroke victim for 2 years, and I got to tell you, it still was a very dark place. It was very difficult. It was draining, and my heart goes out to people who also are or were caretakers. I get it. And so any help you can get at all, sometimes it's just what you need just to make it to the next day. So thank you so much, Jason, for being on our show and for sharing this. And again, guys, it's Jason DeBono with NuView Trust. That's NuView Trust.com. And as always, Tammy, we have to wrap it up, but you need to take it away and tell people how they can reach out for more info.
Absolutely. And you and I have to talk later because I am also a UCF alum. So.
All right, go Knights.
That's right. Go Knights. So anyways, thank you again, Jason, for being on with us, and Jennifer for hosting as always. And if you would like to contact Jason, I will have all of his information in our show notes. And you can also email me and I will send the message along. My email is Tammy, Tammy @leafylegalservices.com. And we also love to hear from you. So we are on all podcast platforms and also social media at Leafy Legal. And we love your ratings and your comments, so keep them coming. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did and got as much information out of it as I did. So thanks again, Jason. And we will see you next time. So have a great day, and bye-bye for now.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit leafylegalservices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. leafylegalservices.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't wait. Take action now. LeafyLegalServices.com. Protect your assets, grow your business, and manage your wealth.